Hello, everybody, and welcome to the BioRAFT Community Connection webinar series. We are going to start our webinar right now titled Fit Testing Do's and Don'ts. So this webinar really came about at a time when I was thinking about fit testing conversations with other people, talking about respirators on past webinars, and realizing just how much greater demand there is for fit testing, and also the just general increased risks of being in close contact with somebody who is kind of necessarily breathing unmasked air. It seemed like a topic that everybody really was interested in, and it's great to have so many people on who are here to learn. And also a huge thank you to our panelists for spending their time and energy to come on and talk through this topic with us, and also provide this forum. So this are the EHS Community Connection webinars, right? We really love having all of you weigh in with your own ideas, with your own challenges and solutions. That's why we have the Q&A tab over in the Zoom webinar control panel. So if you go to your Zoom webinar panel, you click on the Q&A button, it'll take you to a new tab where you can ask questions about our topic that we'll address later on in the webinar during the live Q&A. That is a great space to ask your questions versus the chat. The chat, things can get lost very easily, but also in the Q&A, we allow you to thumbs up the questions you like the most, so that way we can address the things that are most interesting to you. And also you have the ability to reply to each other's responses. That way we are not bottlenecking information. You know, if we're talking about one thing, you can have a side conversation about another one, ask for clarifying information. And there are a lot of times where there are side conversations going on during the actual webinar. As things come up, people get ideas. It's one of the great things that I love about these. So this is really about all of us here. Feel free to go ahead and pop those questions in, and we will get to as many of them as we can. So to start off, I'd like our panelists to just go ahead and give an introduction about their backgrounds themselves, a little bit of context about how they've been doing fit testing in their programs here. So Mary, would you mind starting us off?
Hi all, Mary Duda. I'm at Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska. This is our church. So for years we fit test all our med students, and now this year it's 1 million students pretty much. We have a heavy emphasis on health careers here, so it's been everybody that needs one. So and I'm looking forward to learning from my fellow panelists here too, seeing how you guys are doing stuff, and looking at the question from Brian in the Q&A already of what are you doing for med students and Appendix D, and looking forward to hearing from everybody. So nice meeting you.
Fantastic. And also quick, just gold star to Brian for being the first one into the Q&A. Thank you for kicking that off. And Ladan, would you mind going next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ladan Khandel. I am an industrial hygienist managing the day-to-day activities of the Respiratory Protection Program at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. You can see the view from our lab right behind me, the famous Berkeley Campanile. The LBNL is a Department of Energy funded and University of California run laboratory, and we have a policy to medically clear, train, and fit test anyone who has to work within 6 feet of others for a half-face elastomeric respirator and P100 cartridges. And since I started working here in May, we have fit tested 350 people, me personally. And we have an average of about 1,000 people coming on site daily, which is 20 to 25% of our usual. And we have had 0 on-site transmission so far. So I'd say our policies are proving themselves to be effective. And yeah.
Wow, congratulations. That is a real accomplishment.
Thank you.
All right, and last but certainly not least, Jill, would you mind giving us a little bit of information about yourself?
Sure, yeah, I'm Jill Parrott. I'm the Environmental Health and Safety Director at Providence College in Rhode Island. I think a bit of a smaller scale institution than my fellow panelists, about, I don't know, 5,000, I think, undergrads. We do not have a medical program. We are liberal arts for sure. I think I've done probably about 200 people with fit testing. It's predominantly people that are non-professional users of N95s, if that makes sense. Like, they're not medical professionals for the most part. It's people that would have exposure, close contact with others, and people that are overseeing our quarantine and isolation wards. So fit testing is, I don't know, I never thought it would take up as much of my time, but it's a huge part of my job now.
All right. Great. Well, without any further ado, we are going to go ahead and get into our questions. So Jill, actually, the first one I would like to ask you here. So few organizations had a pre-existing fit testing program, as you mentioned there, and certainly not one robust enough to handle the demands of COVID. So how have you built out the program at Providence College in order to meet this increased scale?
Yeah, so I don't want to say I've started from scratch, but it's about as close to starting from scratch as you can, I think. I started in February of last year, so just, I don't know, 3 weeks before spring break, of which students never came back for that last academic year. Our use before that was limited to Appendix D uses, some of our art spaces, ceramics, the vivarium for allergens. It was, we had a program, we met the standards, but it was not anywhere near what it had to be for COVID. So obviously coming in, that's what I had to focus on right away. But a big problem was that, as I mentioned, the people that are using N95s at the campus are not generally medical professionals, although there are a couple of those. I think people thought it was as simple as getting N95s and just putting them on, and that's a day. So I would say a huge part of the job has been getting in front of all of these groups and meeting people for the first time, honestly, as I walk in the door, and making them understand that this is a program that we have to follow, that if you're giving someone an N95, we need to make sure they're cleared and fit tested. It's been a challenge for sure to deal with all the disparate groups around campus, people that coming from a corporate environment I didn't expect, athletics, the medical trainers, residence life, RAs and hall directors, up through, from people that have been here for ages to like GAs that are volunteering their time. So yeah, it's been a challenge. I think we're there. I've definitely been involved in all steps of the process, sourcing and speccing out the N95s. And like I said, I've done about 200 people now. So I'm hoping that we're nearing the end, but some of the positions, particularly the testing staff, is a high turnover. We are testing twice a week, all students right now. And people burn out, they get sick of that life. So there's also a lot of making go bags for people that might be exposed and making sure they're trained and fit tested. People that would have to go into a quarantine room and fix something, and that needs to be suited up for that. So I would say, yeah, the biggest challenge, I think it might have been easier if I had been there longer. And it also might have been easier if I came from a higher ed background, but my fit testing experience was more emergency use first, and then firefighters was my other. So I know N95 potential, experience in particular. So yeah, we've been building the airplane in flight, as we like to say.
Yeah. Well, speaking of sort of limited resources and trying to really get the most out of what you have, Mary, I'd like to know from you, what COVID, let me rephrase that. COVID has challenged all of us to work with extremely limited resources. How has this come up for you in the context of fit testing?
A couple of different ways. One is just personnel. There's three of us that were trained to do this. So it's been tough finding the time, because a lot of it's, we have 150 students we need to have tested by next week. Can you guys drop everything and get that done? So doing that. And then, just the sheer fact of trying to find masks for people. Like I said, we've been doing our med students for 15 years probably. And, we'd order a case of respirators and next week they'd be there and off we'd go. And it's been a real challenge trying to find respirators for these people. And we don't know when we get to our fit test event and they hand us these boxes of masks and, we didn't know what they were, starting anew with different kind of masks, different stuff. Getting the fit testing equipment for a while was a little difficult. We had some older ones that weren't working so well, so we wanted to get some new nebulizers and stuff, and trying to get those and driving around to all the Grangers in town trying to find it. It's been a challenge trying to just to get the equipment and finding the time to get these things over the past year. It's gotten better, but it's still kind of are we going to have what we need to get stuff done?
Mhm. Yeah. And Ladan, I'd like to ask you our next question here, building off what Mary was talking about with finding the right respirator. I know that these one-way valves on a lot of respirators have really just been a headache for a lot of safety professionals. Have there been any ways that you've successfully enforced and just sort of employed a policy to make sure that those can be used safely?
Yeah, so actually all of the half-face respirators that we issue people do have one-way valves. And the Berkeley lab has developed a policy that the exhalation valves must be covered with a cloth or bandana. And that's really just to protect others who may enter the same space without a half-face respirator later. And doing this can also protect the fit tester during fit testing. And we came up with this policy at the very beginning of COVID and shelter in place, when there was really little information out there as far as comparing respiratory particle emissions from different respirators and face coverings. And our policy was driven by the CDC, our local county guidelines, and the city of Berkeley. And they all put out detailed orders which stated that valve masks and respirators do not comply with the face covering guidelines. And there's a lot more data now. I think NIOSH just released a report in December that actually confirmed that respiratory droplets are in fact being emitted from these valves, and they can be aerosolized. So we think our strategy is still very relevant, and it's an effective form of source control. And then as far as communicating and enforcing this strategy, I found that a lot of people think it's very silly at first that they have to cover their mask with another mask, and feels like we've really come full circle here. But I found that once I explained the concept of source control and let them know that covering the exhalation valve does not affect the seal of the respirator if it's done correctly, and it doesn't make the mask any less comfortable to wear. They're more understanding and open to it. And also it shows that the communication of the strategy is really key here, and helping people understand that this policy is really for the benefit of others, and understanding how our actions could impact the health of others potentially. That's really been a key theme since the beginning of the pandemic. So I find that that's really helpful.
And did you encounter at any point just sort of maybe an aha moment or anything in terms of communication with these folks as they introduced these objections to actually kind of following this guidance that you're putting out?
Yeah, I mean, the lab in general is very safety forward, and we found that some people are really good at reminding others, their coworkers, so we do rely a bit on that. But then our aha moment was really just communicating and letting people know that this is for the benefit of their coworkers. And I think that's really what's helped the most.
Great. Well, moving on to a related idea, just talking about how we keep everybody safe during the fit test. Jill, I was wondering if you could talk to me about whether you found any particularly successful workarounds to keep yourself and also the person being fit tested safe during the appointment.
Yeah, I would say the thing that's made the biggest difference for me was the discovery of single-use disposable hoods. I go through a lot of those. We had, with such a small program that we had one kit with one hood, and in researching, gosh, how can I disinfect that every time and not leave a residual odor that would interfere with the saccharin or the Bitrex? I don't know, I lucked out. I found this company that makes them out of, I think, Spencer, Massachusetts. So that's been absolutely key for me. I don't have to worry about cross-contamination of people. So yeah, that's been key. I've also done a lot of the initial training online. I know this is a specific fit testing, but when I train on the N95s, I also have to train on the use of, the face shields and the gloves and the goggles, and, especially for people that don't have a lot of experience with that kind of equipment. So generally there's like an intro training over Zoom, like everything else right now, so that when we're in person, I can honestly kind of reduce our contact with each other. I also didn't used to wear an N95 because I was so worried about sourcing, but we were able to restock over the winter break, even though it's not the same models we were doing. And so that's been, redoing a lot of work as they're different models, but I do have enough to do myself now. So that's been working out, and knock on wood, I've been safe and I haven't infected anyone else that I know of. So I think we're good.
Fantastic. Mary, same question for you. Have you found any particular workarounds that have been just very effective?
We made our own disposable hoods because we couldn't find them. So we had an assembly line of trash bags and tape and scissors. Because we came up with the same thing Jill said. We're like, we had, I think we have 3 hoods because we were doing them before, but same thing, like there is no way we're going to be able to disinfect these things between all these people. So that's one thing. And then we also had we've gotten it down to a science now where we have a big room and we have one person coming in and out of it, so we don't have a big clump of people. We have somebody at the front desk kind of training the people on the way in. We have a super awesome work study student helper person that is amazing, and she graduates, and it's going to be super sad when she graduates this year. But she has gotten really good at teaching people how to put the masks on. And so she would teach them how to get the masks on. So by the time they got us, we were just, making sure they fit okay and putting the trash bag over their head, making a joke about how your mom told you never to put a trash bag over your head, but here we go. And getting them in. We got it down to a science of almost an assembly line, because I'm watching the questions go by and somebody said, how many do you do at a time? We would schedule them. We do 150 over the course of like 3 hours, but we had schedules, and this many people come in at this time, and we'd only have one person next to a tester at the same time, just to kind of minimize how many people were in the room at the same time.
Yeah. And just a reminder to our attendees that if you do have a question you'd like our panelists to answer, or possibly even hear from other attendees about, great to use the Q&A tab over the chat. Just it stops things from getting lost as readily. That information is saved more easily. You can interact with it. So it just makes things a little bit more clean and increases the chances of your question actually being seen and answered. And Ladan, I was wondering from your side, what PPE you use for yourself when you're actually performing fit testing on all of these folks?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'm very fortunate that I have a huge room that is totally at my disposal for using for fit testing. It allows me to be at least 12 feet away from the person I'm fit testing. So that's really nice. And the room I'm in also has really excellent ventilation. It has an HVAC system, and we have a little portable air purifier in the room. So I feel comfortable just wearing a good fitting face covering. I started recently double masking with the face covering as suggested by our Lord and Savior, Dr. Fauci. If I ever do need to get up close in person to the trainee to help them adjust the respirator, then I'll quickly don my own half face respirator, put on my safety glasses and gloves, and just be in contact just for a couple minutes to help them adjust the respirator. Yeah, so I think if I have anything else on that. Yeah, that's about it for my answer.
Jill, Mary, would you like to weigh in on this one before we move on?
I'm glad to hear that you feel comfortable with just a cloth mask, because I kind of went back and forth on the N95. I think Jill said something about there aren't that many to go around, so we don't want to take them. And what I kind of came down to is that they are wearing an N95 and they are inside a hood, and the rooms we've been getting are huge, like you said. So I'm glad to hear that we're kind of on the same page, and I didn't put myself at all kind of risk.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I kind of rationalize using the N95 by the fact that I can more accurately show them how to use it and how to put it on and make sure that we're dealing with the same model. So that's what I made myself feel better with. I certainly reuse it. I'm only wearing it during the fit test. But I was a little worried, because they have the sensitivity portion where they're not wearing anything. And I know they're like in a hood, but I don't particularly enjoy wearing face shields myself. I feel like I bump into things all the time, especially when I'm moving around people. So yeah, I'm not using N95.
Yeah. And just to weigh in here in terms of using a respirator, I think that it is very reasonable to say that you all are in this situation very important and important enough to merit one. Of course, these are limited resources, and it sounds like nobody is being frivolous with these. And at the same time, I love the point of being able to show somebody, oh, mine fits like this, and that's how I know this is comfortable, and kind of giving that mirroring. And also, there's that risk of if you are fit testing a lot of people and you do somehow get infected or exposed, that can then get passed on to a lot of other people in that environment. And also just the PR of hearing, oh, the person doing the fit testing, acquired COVID during fit testing and passed it on, could really be problematic if you're trying to sort of say this is a effective, important program where there's already some people who have trust issues around face coverings and face masks. Oh, sorry, got a little error here from Microsoft, but just working through that now.
I know it sounds like all three of us are pretty lean as far as our crews to do fit testing. So if anyone, I think, questioned me at my university, I would say, well, who's going to do the fit testing when I'm out for 10 to 14 days? Because for me, it's just me. I have a department of 2 and they didn't have much of a program before. So they got lucky. They hired me when they did. Not to toot my own horn, but they did. So.
Well, sometimes that happens, right? With COVID, we just have really impeccable instances of timing where you think, oh, thank goodness we have this person here, that we got them on before this happened, that they joined at this really critical time. Something to be thankful for sure. I've seen also a few questions in the chat as well as the Q&A about quantitative fit testing in addition to qualitative. So Ladan, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to that and whether if you've been doing quantitative fit testing and how you've been dealing with sterilizing the device and just sort of working with those difficulties.
Yeah. So I actually have a lot to say about this one. We only do quantitative fit testing at the lab. We have a TSI port account, and in between uses, well, so I guess first I'll say that I'm scheduling these appointments in a 1-hour one-on-one session, and that really gives me the ability to go through the training, which takes about 10 to 15 minutes, the actual fit test, which is just the standardized TSI's test. I think it's the same with the Osha test. Anyway, so that takes about 10 minutes, and then that leaves like 30 minutes for me to wipe down all the surfaces, let the HVAC and ventilation system do its thing. I have a little portable air purifier that I turn on, and that really just cleans out all the particles in the room. It has a HEPA filter. And then one thing I'll mention about wiping down surfaces. So I actually wipe down all the surfaces, pens, tables, the port account, the exterior tubes and everything. And it's really important to pay attention to the contact time listed on the solutions you use. If they are EPA registered, I use a food grade ethyl alcohol based sanitizer, and it has a 1-minute contact time. So I'll go through and spray everything and then wait a couple minutes and come back and wipe it down with a paper towel. And then regarding the portable air purifier we use, many of you know that when you're using a quantitative fit tester, there does have to be some ambient particle concentration in the room for it to actually work. And I've noticed that the HEPA filter just totally drains all of those particles. So I do have to turn it off before the next person comes in. Sometimes I'll have to quickly light a candle to increase the particle concentration in the room. I actually got a designated hot work permit for that, which was fun. So another thing, we have a document that we actually email to all of our trainees prior to their appointment, and it's called Keeping You Safe During Fit Testing. And that goes through all of our cleaning procedures, all of the ways that we sanitize everything. And it kind of gives a little blurb about how the TSI port account works. It's constantly pulling air through those tubes, and it runs off of very high purity isopropyl alcohol. So the exhausted air that's coming out of the port account has been sanitized. So yeah.
No, this is great. It's also really nice to have the quantitative perspective. I know that can be something that isn't as common, and specifically talking about decontamination, something that comes into direct contact with breath, and that multiple people might be using as a delicate instrument, right? You don't want to just be dumping a lot of random things in there to potentially harm it. Yeah. And it is an expensive piece of equipment, but we found that quantitative fit testing has a lot of benefits, and for us, it's worth it if you have the resources for it. And as we posted here, Ladan has shared a link that you can reference for information about conducting quantitative fit testing. I tried to shorten that for everybody on the webinar, but also these links are live on the webinar page, so you can go ahead and get there if you don't want to have to copy anything down. These are case sensitive, so just make sure you take care of all that if you are copying it from here, but it's probably a lot easier to just go straight to the page. So Mary, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about one or more ways that you've helped to make your fit testing process more efficient to handle this increased number of appointments.
Well, like I said, we make sure we set up enough time, and we've tried to figure out how many we need to get per person, that kind of thing. We send them if we can find it. It really depends on the mask, but some of them have instructions online. The 3M 1860, which we can't get, and then we did get, and they were counterfeit. So now, but they have a good video of how to put them on, and really like try to get people to understand how to put them on before they get to the fit tester seems to speed up the process, and let them like futz around with it a little bit before they get to us speeds it up. Like I said, having somebody working some sort of front desk really seems to, with these huge groups, really seems to help. Keeping stuff organized, making sure, giving everybody all the stuff they need, and trying to get them through like that is helpful.
So what would you say has been the maybe most burdensome part of the process? Would that be sort of that intermediate beginning part where they're just getting familiar and you're switching it over to Zoom, or more about trying to speed up the things that don't have to be done in person so you can really focus on the stuff that has to be done one-on-one?
Yeah, it's getting the stuff done that doesn't have to be done with the fit tester, because what we've been struggling with, and I don't know if this is a question we're going to get to, and I just stole your thunder, but the big struggle, and somebody mentioned it in the Q&A, is the masks we've been getting have been super difficult to fit. Some of them, back in the day, we'd get 3M 1870 pluses, the auras. They're foldable and they fit just about everybody. And then over the past year now, we've been getting random masks that from who knows what, and it's been a struggle getting them to fit to people. We had them tying knots in the strings in the back, and we had, we're really spending a lot of time with the people. So if they get up to us and they're ready to go, that makes a huge difference to getting people through. So I don't have to spend 5 minutes explaining how to put it on and then test them and then try to figure out how to get it to fit. If somebody's up there saying, okay, here's your mask, here's how you put it on, do this, it really speeds up the process.
Jill, anything for you that you have found to be particularly effective at increasing efficiency in the fit testing process?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned before, the disposable hoods have been key for me to not have to futz around with too much decon aside from the nebulizers themselves and such. I'm trying to do as much on Zoom as possible. I guess all the things that have kept me and the testees safe are really the same things that increase efficiency. I don't know, I've gotten really good at doing it at a drop of a hat for a group of 30 people, and kind of getting everyone in and out as quickly as possible. Yeah, it's just cutting, I don't know, just cutting time where I can, but making sure that they understand how to use it. So the intro over Zoom, I guess, is kind of similar to having a person outside before you get to the fit tester. I don't have anyone else, so they get to look at my mug on Zoom before they come see me in person.
All right. Well, I think we're going to go through one more round of questions here before we move on to the Q&A. It looks like there's a lot to talk about here, so I think we might switch over a little early to try and get to those. So Jill, again for you, I was wondering if you could talk about one challenge that you have still been facing around fit testing. So if there's more than one thing, I don't know if
all right. So obviously everything we've talked about has been challenging. I mean, these times are challenging. The workload is challenging. The schedule's challenging. We're trying to get all these people done. But like, I've been fit testing since, my first EHS job. And my biggest challenge is facial hair. Facial hair is my biggest challenge. I'm so sick of talking to people about facial hair. People take it very seriously. And of course, this is aside from people that have like their religious concerns. I work at a Catholic college, so I haven't come across that in this particular situation. But dude, so many discussions about facial hair. So as I mentioned in the part that about resources, I have like this job and I bring it with me all the time, and it's got all the funny names. So it's kind of like, oh, huh, are you wearing a Zappa? Oh, that's gonna work. Okay, good job. I don't know. It's impossible. It's not a conversation I enjoy having. It's very personal. Like I don't care if you have facial hair, but if you have it, then I can't get this respirator on you, and you have to go explain to your supervisor what the problem is. In my past positions where it's been like more of an emergency use, I'd keep like the Bic and the little thing of shaving cream and be like, aha, time to shave. But with these N95s all day, every day, either you got hair or you don't. And I don't know, I've been the bad guy a few times.
Well,
it sounds so silly, but it is forever the bane of my existence.
So somehow, to jump in on that, we got our medical students, I don't know what they tell the medical students, they do not come at me with facial hair anymore. I don't know what they did. I don't know what they told them. They do not come at me that way anymore.
Oh my gosh, I'm so jealous.
I would try to talk to them and see what they do. But the dentists, you're right, we had 3 dentists that they didn't want to shave today because they had pictures afterwards and they needed their facial hair in their class picture. And stop, why are you really annoyed me, because now you have to come back. You're wasting my time. I got mad.
The men's lacrosse team, I gave them, we've been doing N95s for their air travel. We're a Big East school and athletics is king, and we have enough supply now that I can provide them for their trips. But there were, I don't know, a good handful of them were, this is my lucky beard and I'm not shaving it till after we play Georgetown. And I'm like, dude, I don't know what to tell you, So yes, again, there's certain groups that I think are always challenging. And
the other one is, I've had, so the 2 guys that fit test with me, one of them literally is Santa Claus. He does Santa at Christmas time. And so he starts growing the beard right about now. And the other one, it's also kind of has a big beard, and both of them are like, no, you cannot do this. I can do this because I am not wearing an N95. You cannot do this. And usually I'll send them to them because I hear it better from men, I think, in some ways. But the number of, I had one a couple weeks ago and I said, did you shave? Uh-huh. Today? No. Well, we told you it had to be today. I can't fit test you. And it just gets so sad. And we told you. And so, yeah, it is a struggle. And I like I used that chart too. Of you got a Fu Manchu. I don't know if that's going to work. Or we had one dental student that actually, he took off his class face covering and there was a goatee under there. And he's like, I looked at that sheet and I very carefully shaved this so it would fit. And so that, maybe it's helping.
Props to somebody who can still rock a goatee. Ladan, is this something that you've run into in terms of having difficulties with people refusing to shave facial hair for just aesthetic reasons outside of more religious exemptions?
It is, yeah. And we even have it written right in the calendar reminder for the fit test that they do need to arrive clean shaven, but it still happens. It still happens all the time. One thing I want to say is that if you do have a razor and some shaving cream available, I highly recommend having the space that person uses to shave be kind of blocked off and avoided for a couple hours after, because that is some time that they're spending in there without a face covering, and that's kind of just releasing their respiratory droplets in that space. So I think it's really important. If I do have somebody shave in the bathroom, which is really, really not often, I really prefer to just reschedule the appointment. But if it is an emergency and somebody uses that restroom to shave in there, I actually put a sign up that says, do not use until 2 p.m. and something like 3 hours after whatever time they shave. So, yeah.
That's a great point.
Yeah. I also hand them a single blade razor, which I think of as some sort of punishment.
Yeah, it's funny. This is definitely, we talk about communication a lot on these webinars because so many of the conflicts that we encounter are communication based and are about these differences in risk perception or risk evaluation. And it sounds like there's this common thread of, on one hand, warning people ahead of time, hey, it's time to be emotionally prepared to part with your facial hair or to change your facial hair. On the other hand, there's a factual element. Oh no, I can wear my respirator, but my beard is small, so it's not going to be a problem, so it's okay. And then there's that denial element. And also, of course, there's that, side of, you don't have to shave your face, right? I can't make you do that. But what I can then do is say you can't get fit tested properly, which means you can't do all the things that you would need for this, and you will be barred from these things. Like, you have this choice. And it's just more, okay, fine, you can get fit tested and shave your beard, or you can not go in and do your job. And that might sometimes help people to see that there's no room for middle ground of, well, what if I just like trim it a lot? Or what if I shave every other day or something? Because ultimately, once they get fit tested, they can always grow the beard back. We can't keep the hair off of them, right? They have to really believe in that and agree to it in order to keep that effective. All right, well, before we move on here, because we do have a lot of ground to cover in the Q&A, first off, a huge thank you to everybody for participating. It is great to see that. So before we get started, I am going to go ahead and do a quick pitch for our upcoming webinars and sessions. Like I mentioned at the beginning, we have started doing a every other week in between webinar weeks on Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. a drop-in problem-solving session. This is a place where Jonathan Klein and myself, Jonathan is our Director of Risk Management and Safety Education, will be coming together to answer your questions. Sort of a EHS call-in show, light car talk, but will probably be a little bit less funny. And then in 2 weeks, we've got health and safety after the vaccine, just kind of looking forward and thinking about what things will be like as vaccine rollout happens. How will health and safety change? In what ways will it go back to normal? And in what ways may it never be normal again? Just taking a second to breathe and look forwards. After that, I'm going to be going into designing safety training that sticks, looking at ways that we can just make more effective safety training when you are not able to go out and get a course that already exists, but need to design your own content. And coming up finally, we've got how to engage your scientists in safety. So again, talking about communication, soft skills, and positioning environmental health and safety and the scientist on the same side towards a common problem, and really getting that valuable segment of your organization bought in to support safety and support logistics. And I'm also going to be launching a poll right now, so I would appreciate it to have as many people as possible to go ahead and participate here. So these are, as I mentioned, the Environmental Health and Safety Community Connection webinars. We rely really heavily on you, our EHS community, to keep them going. We have great panelists like the three we have with us today to volunteer their time, create a space where we can have these conversations and where everybody can come together to share their expertise. But we need help. We need panelists. We need to know what topics you're interested in so we can continue to provide you with webinars that are valuable for you. So let us know what topics you're most interested in. You can select multiple ones, whether you or somebody you know in your network might be interested in participating in an upcoming webinar. And then also just whether you'd like to attend one of these drop-in problem-solving sessions, we can make sure we reach out with the link and just make joining that a little bit easier. So I'll leave that up a little bit. Go ahead and put on our prompt of the week that we'll be switching back and forth between. Just some nice news here from everybody, and just great to hear again, like what's going well in people's lives at a time when there's a lot going wrong. So without any further ado here, we can go ahead and get on to our Q&A. So first question should hopefully be a pretty quick one from Melissa, asking if you could send a link for those disposable fume hoods. Disposable single-use hoods, not fume hoods there. So, I think Jill, you mentioned a group there. Would that be something you could just share with me and then I can send out to our registrants after the webinar?
Yes, I can do that. I put it in the chat as well, but it's gotten buried, but happy to send it to Matt for distribution after.
Yes.
There was a reasonably quick turnaround too. I mean, they're in Mass and I'm in Rhode Island, but they shipped it out quickly. So
great. Yeah, that's another great reason to use the Q&A. Just helps to, what's the word? Stop things from getting lost. It's a single stream, stuff goes very quickly. So there's that. And in addition to that, next question here is from Nancy. So Nancy asks, how would you describe the supply situation of N95s? Are you still allowing N95 reuse, as the CDC does allow when supplies are restricted? And then just in terms of light of this, what would be your preference? And I think this was a question that Mary, you wanted to answer?
Sure, I can. We're still reusing them. It's been quite the switch, because in the before times, if we had somebody we couldn't fit, we just chuck the respirator and get them a different size or something like that. And now can't do that. So what we've been doing with our students is they get, I think, 4 or 5 different respirators, and then they get a little paper bag to keep them in, or they're getting recommended to, get a Tupperware or something like that. And we do have disinfection machines. It's housed in the nursing school, but anybody can go use them. So we are still reusing them and telling them, they write their names on them. They kind of get instructions of, if the straps are starting to come loose, it's starting to look a little sketchy, chuck it and come get a new one. So we're still having trouble getting them. I think it's a nursing professor that's in charge of getting them, and she tells us that she's still kind of struggling to get stuff. So we're still being, especially the size small. She has the size smalls locked up in a cabinet, and you can't get at them unless you darn well need it. So because it's a tough one. The smalls are in very, very short supply.
Great. Jill, Ladan, would either of you like to weigh in on that before we move on?
I know for us, it seems like sourcing is less of a problem, except the problem it makes for me in that we're having a hard time keeping a consistent source. Like, we have a purchasing team, they're being successful, but it's tough when I just got 10 cases of 3M 8210s and I fit tested everyone on 8200s. So it's kind of a pain, but they're finding them. They are reusing. I guess it depends on the group. A lot of people have them just in case. Our asymptomatic COVID testing staff will reuse for a work week. And our symptomatic testing staff, I think, are throwing theirs away, but there's only 2 of them. So I don't know. We're trying to keep it under control, particularly to kind of help me out.
All right. Moving on here to Neil's question. Has anyone tried out the MSA Advantage elastomeric respirator for healthcare workers? It does not have an exhalation valve. So is this a model that the 3 of you are familiar with? And if not, this is one of the moments that I love about these webinars, because our panelists are not all knowing, and this is a great chance for anybody else to weigh in on the matter who might have experience with that if you are familiar with it.
So we have them, just a couple of them on pre-order for us to check out. I don't know anything about the availability or when it'll show up. I'm sure a lot of people are also trying to get their hands on them, but yeah, this respirator is going to be really interesting because I think it filters the exhaled air, or it has special cartridges designed so that the air incoming and outgoing is coming through the P100 filter. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see. I'm curious to know if it kind of adds some obstruction to breathing.
Just as a quick heads up for everybody, I think my upstairs neighbors have a few younger kids, and I think they are getting their afternoon energy burst. So if you hear some thumping going on, those are I'd say pitter patter, but it's a little bit more forceful. Just as a quick heads up for any unanticipated noise. So next question here is from Tom, asking, have you ever tried to fit test someone that may have had COVID and has his or her sense of smell or taste not come fully back?
I know I personally have. There's one person for whom I was not able to get any sort of sensitivity. And thankfully they had, that was their primary, they were volunteering, I think, to help in the testing center. They can't now. I don't know. It's the kind of situation where I wish that NIOSH would allow safe use of Irritant smoke just as a super backup, because I think it's possible to use safely, and it really, I don't know, it is, everyone is sensitive to it, so anyway, that's just an aside. But yeah, I don't know how to get around that. I just had to say, sorry, man, pick a different job.
I haven't run into anybody that can't smell anymore, but we've had people that smell differently. because we ask them, what do you smell? Because are you just smelling gross mask, or what are you smelling? And most people will say, oh, it's really sweet or something like that. But the ones that have had COVID and then their smell is altered, they taste mint, and I can't remember what the other one was, but it's not the same smell that everybody else smells. And so it is a tough one, because mint, you think, well, were they chewing gum 5 minutes before they came in here? Or is this legit, or what's going on here? So we've had to be careful with that too.
That seems like a great way to get a new baseline. Perception is always a tricky thing to try to standardize. I'm sure anybody in the food service industry can attest to that.
Yeah, and I started jumping right to Bitrex. I had, the idea was to use saccharin, to use the least impactful of all things. But boy, oh boy, did it add a lot of time, because there was a reasonable amount of people that couldn't detect it. So I've had to bust out the bigger gun with the Bitrex for everybody.
Have you found that just from a psychological standpoint, maybe people work a little harder to get their mask properly fit tested if they are encountering something unpleasant like Bitrex versus something where it's a little more tolerable, like, oh, I can taste a little bit of sweetness, but that's fine, right?
That's totally true, because I used to, do, full face respirators for firefighters, and I talked up that irritant smoke like it was going to be a noxious, and you could see them like, oh, or wait, you know what? I probably should shave. Yeah, you should.
Moving on here, a question from Lacia asking, have you performed fit testing for students or staff that purchase KN95s online from vendors like Amazon? Or do you discourage people from wearing respirators that haven't been issued by your office?
We're not fit testing people that bring them in. For whatever reason, the lawyers tell us not to, in some ways. And we know that the masks we're getting are okay. We don't know what they're bringing in. I had a coworker come in here with a KN95 on and a beard, both. And I just looked at him like, no, you know that you're, we lost Matt. So we're not testing people that bring in strays.
Yeah, I've gotten that question a few times, but same thing. I can't speak. I know counterfeiting is a huge problem. I can't speak to what they have. So you get it from me, or you don't get fit tested. Oh, but with that, what are we going to do?
Thanks, Jill and Mary. It's Chris Richards. I can jump in here, and Matt should join us in just a sec. So we'll move on. Edward had a question. Some cloth masks come with a 2.5 PM insert. Does this have the same effectiveness as an N95? Anyone of you?
Jump in here. So I think what's really effective with all these masks is the tight fitting around the face, and it's pretty hard to get that with the cloth face masks, especially ones that loop behind the ears. It's definitely not as effective as the ones that go all the way around the head, both behind the neck. So I think, it could potentially add some extra coverage or filtration, but I definitely wouldn't put it to the same effectiveness as an N95.
Sure, that seems to make sense. Any other feedback on that, or do the rest of you agree on that?
Yeah, I don't think it's a NIOSH rating, so it's not an OSHA regulated respirator. So I'm not fit testing it, because I would never be able to get it. Plus the ones I've seen are like reasonably small, to insert into a cloth mask. And I don't know. Yeah, I feel like they wouldn't go far. It would be an easy path for the air to go around them. So, I don't think it's a bad thing for, people in their home life, or people who don't need an N95 but want to feel a little better. That's great. But I don't know. It's not official, so I can't really speak to them when they ask me about them.
Sure. Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Sorry for that little blip. I'm glad to see the backup worked out there. That's the first time we've ever had to use it. So in some very exciting news, it's something I just learned. When you join a Zoom webinar partway through, you actually lose all the history of the Q&A from earlier. So fortunately, there are a few people, we have a very active Q&A who are still asking. So while I go through the ones that are coming up, Chris, would you mind just sending me the messages that are sort of the top of the queue over, and I will go ahead and read those off from that way. And that way we don't lose the ones that were on before
Sure.
I left. Perfect. Thank you. All right, so we're just gonna wait for that to come through. Looks like the most recent things are just some comments here, but thanks everybody for understanding as we go through this fun and exciting time.
Matt, sorry, do you want to jump into one of the other questions? I don't see it either.
Oh, okay, strange. That's very unfortunate. Yeah, so folks, if you haven't had your question answered and you wouldn't mind re-asking it, that would be really appreciated. I've never actually run into this one before, so I have not seen this happen before, so I'm very sorry about this. And, try to do the best we can with all the fun COVID things that life throws at us, right? And you know what, this is a great chance to go into the chat perhaps and see what, thanks Laurel for doing that. We should hopefully have the Q&A reserved after this, at least something Zoom that logs, but right now seems to be gone.
So I can jump in and answer Maria Piconi's question about requirements and training for PAPRs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that much, but I think I know enough to give a solid answer for this. So PAPRs, if it's the hood type face piece, it doesn't necessarily need quantitative or qualitative fit testing, but if it is any kind of tight fitting face piece, it does. And at least at the lab, we still do a medical clearance for both types of PAPR. If it's a loose fitting hood, I think it's a bit of a quicker process to grant medical clearance, but if it is the tight fitting face piece, it's very similar to the half face elastomeric respirators as far as medical clearance. And obviously training for all of it. Yes, and demonstrating that you know how to use it. That's very important. Thank you.
All right. Let me go ahead. It looks like we got one question coming in here. So Neil wanted to know, okay, I already got the one about the advantage, the elastomeric respirators. Okay, great. So it looks like Jonathan went ahead and get that for me. So let me just get my email open here and I should be able to reference that.
So while you're working on that, Lorna asked, how many retests have you done at your sites? She says, we have an issue with not getting the same respirator when supplies are low. Yeah, we're facing that right now. So that's kind of why when they do get them, they're giving people 4 and 5 at a time. So that's what they get. And we tell them, guard this with your life. Don't leave it don't lose this, do not. And so we just ran into this. We tested our, I think, senior nursing students on the Moldex one, I think. And then hallelujah, we got in the 3M 1860s, which are, we had used for years, and then they were counterfeit. So now we're retesting them again on the 8210. And somebody put it in the chat that now those are counterfeit too, which I had not seen until today. Whoever shared that, you're my hero. So we're supposed to fit test a whole bunch of students next week on those. And so I need to send that on and see if we can take a look and see if we got the bad news ones. It's frustrating having to keep retesting them. So what we've been telling our students too, when they come in is, look, if you get to the hospital, because we have medical students, dental, and PAs. So if you come in, if you go to the hospital and somebody hands you some other mask, okay, you have not been fit tested on that, but now you know how it should fit, right? If it has the nose piece, now you know how to push that nose piece on, you know how tight it should be, you know how to do that fit test of your own to, blow out a little bit, see, are you leaking air, until they can get back. Because what we were finding is a lot of our nursing students had worked over the summer at a nursing home or somewhere getting some experience, and they got handed masks all summer long. Here, put this on, no fit test, no nothing, which freaks us out. But we're hoping that at the very least, if they get into that kind of situation and had been fit test on something that we gave them, they have an idea at least of how it should fit, and they know what to ask for. No, I was fit test on this one. Do you have that? So yeah, it's a struggle, and it is frustrating because like you said, we get what we get when they come in.
All right, well, it is 4 p.m. Eastern here. The time has just blazed by, and I know there are so many more questions to answer. So we always try to see if we can go a little bit longer to try and address some of these things. And of course, if any of our panelists have to leave for any reason, something comes up, normally time doesn't allow, that's completely understandable. And we sincerely appreciate all of your help and time. And thank you for coming on and creating the space where we can talk about this important topic. Do you know if the three of you will be able to stick around for a little bit longer as we answer some more questions? Looks like there are more coming in than I think we've had for a while, but it's great to see everybody's questions. So definitely pop those into the Q&A. That will just help enable other attendees to answer your questions. You know, this is so much information coming at us, you know, trying to drink from the fire hose. So great opportunity if you put it in the Q&A to get an answer that we may not have time to address. So moving on here for Ladan, one question for you is whether you find there's a need to sanitize the interior of the port account tubes.
Yeah, so I've been trying to find the link to TSI's data on this. They actually did a study and kind of proved that there is no need for sanitizing the inside of the port account tubes. I kind of mentioned this in one of my earlier answers that when the port account is on, it's constantly pulling air through those tubes, and all those particles are, I think the port account itself is a condensation nuclei counter. So it's kind of growing those particles using isopropyl alcohol, and what's being exhausted from there is technically sanitized since it is kind of covered in 99% or higher IPA. So I don't think there's really a need to. I see some people did a good job of answering this question in the chat. I still want to try to find the TSI's actual data on this, but I haven't found it yet.
Yeah, it's always funny to see these very sort of COVID influenced, you know, magnified important products not have things that actually address the new COVID implications for their own things and provide recommendations. But great to see that there is a lot of work being done to try and find those new best practices as we're going and working.
Yeah. Oh, another thing I'll mention. So when I was talking about port account tubes, I meant the ones that are kind of plugging into the outside of the mask. There is a small tube that you have to plug into the inside, which is the one that's actually sampling from the inside of the mask. And we definitely do soak those in diluted bleach or soapy water, at least overnight. So that one I definitely would recommend cleaning. But the long tubes, the clear one and the blue one that are attached together, I don't think you really need to clean those, at least not the inside.
Great. And then would you mind just sharing some of the materials that you use for this with me after the webinar, and I can make sure that that gets out to our attendees and registrants afterwards as well?
Sure. Yes.
Fantastic. Great. Looking through here.
Oh, it looks like Ken shared the TSI data.
Okay, fantastic. So one person asked here, on average, how many people do you fit test at a time in a single session, and how many would you recommend to be a comfortable amount? Jill, it looks like you have a thought.
I don't know. Comfortable for me is, I mean, one-on-one is really key, and it does sound like that's what my fellow panelists are doing. That is not what I'm doing. That is what I would like to do. I don't know. I feel like 4 is probably my sweet spot. That seems to be about what I tend to get more often. I do have women's soccer on Friday, and it's like 28 girls at once. So we got a nice big gymnasium space to get them all trained up and fit tested. It gets overwhelming. I mean, people, although I guess in the positive, perhaps, is that they get used to wearing them. I mean, these are people that have never worn them before. So, you know, I'd show them all, distribute them, show them all how to put them on, do the positive negative pressure check, and then they get to wait. Try to do my best.
So we have another question here, getting back to the exciting topic of facial hair. One attendee would like to know, respirators are not required for COVID face covering, so N95s would be voluntary. So why do they have to shave if they can do a face covering or even N95 since it's voluntary? So just I think a common question maybe, or something that would be good to just help provide people with a perspective on.
If people are getting them from the college, they're required to wear them under certain circumstances, so it's not voluntary. Prior to COVID, we were all voluntary, but people are wearing them because they're in a position where we feel that we need them to. We've had outbreaks on campus and continue to struggle with positive cases, so that's our position on N95s.
Ours are all, I think, all healthcare settings, so they are required.
And I think speaking to Ladan's point earlier, with over 1,000 people coming on site for work and not having a single case of transmission, respirators do work. Having these policies do work. When you try to keep people and do that initial control of keeping people separate, and then working from there through the hierarchy of controls and risk management to avoid having spread, that works. When you can really enforce that and people buy in, it gets some incredible results. And you need that support as well, right? You can't just be the one person sort of talking into a room when you don't get support anywhere. But when you do have that structure, you get effects. One question here from Nancy asking, do you use a medical questionnaire to do medical clearances?
So we have an actual health services clinic on site. So we're very fortunate to have all the medical actually handled on site. They do 3 different questionnaire consent form type things. I think one of them is just a basic medical history questionnaire.
I have to contract mine out, so they provide it. I mean, it's the the standard Osha questionnaire with perhaps some extra things. I really try not to get in the middle because of HIPAA and everything. So I'm literally in the middle, but I try not to read them.
Seems like a very delicate balance there. Sorry about that. They've got a little siren going by. But one question here from Rebecca asking, what make and models and sizes have you been able to receive? We struggle with fitting women and individuals with more petite features. And Mary, I know that you spoke about having some of the small size respirators under lock and key because those tend to be in greater demand on one hand and also in lesser supply on the other. Is there any particular supplies that have been consistent or plentiful for the 3 of you?
I wrote a note to go find those for you to send out later because we've gone through quite a few over the past year, and off the top of my head, I can't tell you, but I want to go back and look because it has been a struggle to the point where I was like, you're kind of, you got a little bit of an equity problem here that there's a lot of women that we aren't going to be able to send to do their job. There are some men that we needed smalls for, but the vast majority are women, and the vast, vast, vast majority of our nursing students are women. So we were kind of running into a place where we're having women not be able to go do their jobs or their rotations. So, and to be honest, some of it, we had stashes of stuff that we had in the past, and we kind of dug into our stash for a while. But we did have some of the ones we've gotten recently work. So I wrote a note so that I can send it to Matt to send out when he sends out stuff later.
Yeah, so we always send out, an automatic reminder or thank you with an alert for the recording to our attendees and absentees on Monday. And we will try to gather all this information and get it out to you by mid next week in a separate email, just so that way, we're not trying to rush it and we include as much as we can in that information. So keep an eye out there and we'll try and also get that up on the site where possible. And I love the perspective there of it being an equity issue. Sometimes people are so tired with COVID, it can be very exhausting. With these challenges you face, where it can feel hard to be heard, giving that alternate perspective can sometimes snap people out of their standards of thinking and help them realize why it's such an issue. Great job.
Was there a question for me? I'm sorry, the dog sparked.
No problem. I'm still just looking through the questions that have popped up since I last spoke, and also some of the notes that have been sent to me by all of our really fantastic panelists, attendees, and everyone trying to help me get back on this one after that little blip. I'm not seeing anything here that I haven't seen, but hopefully. Great. Okay, yeah, here's one. Are you allowing COVID vaccinated staff? Where's the question here? Sorry, everybody. Are you allowing COVID vaccinated staff to wear an N95 respirator when working in a BSL-3 lab? Or are any of you working in BSL-3 labs? Is that something that you have to worry about?
Yeah, we only go up to BSL-2, but my understanding was that it's not sufficient for a BSL-3 and N95. I think they have to be better than that.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm going to wait a few moments here in case anybody who has a question that got lost in that little blip would like to re-ask it. But right now it looks like we have managed to really blaze through a lot of these things. Apologies to anybody who asked a question in the chat. It's just that not only gotten lost, but also a little buried. So give you a couple minutes here to go ahead and ask those in the questions in the answers area. And we will take a look through there before moving on. In the meantime, go ahead and take another look at our wall here. It's always just, again, nice to see what everybody is feeling good about, what's going well in everybody's life. A lot of folks learning to cook, doing better at cooking, seeing their loved ones get vaccinated, experiencing some birthdays and other celebrations. And it looks like we have another question here. Is anyone else using OSHA approved irritant smoke for fit testing? We have a lab with 100% non-recirculated air where we do this.
I wish I could. I love irritant smoke. I feel like it's the one that gets it done the quickest without having to deal with the hood. But no, I'm not allowed because that's not appropriate for N95s per NIOSH and OSHA.
All right. Well, that really looks like about everything. So a huge thank you to our panelists for their time today. Thank you to all of our attendees for volunteering their time and their expertise and getting such a great active Q&A. I feel like the discussion today was just really dynamic and had a lot of great information exchanged. So we will try to follow up with all the information that our panelists mentioned providing next week. And until then, I hope everybody has a great weekend, enjoys the nice weather where you have it, and we will see you soon. And if you'd again like to join our drop-in problem solving session, you can register live on our website and go ahead and join that. And otherwise, I will see you all in a week or two, depending on what you register for. So have a great day, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.